Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. You know, I'll just say this. We all know what we're going to talk about today. We don't have a guest. To be honest, we had a pretty nice guest that was set to line up and join us, and he had to bail because of all the news here on Friday morning when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Let me also say this. If there is not a more popular man than my co-host Shane Dale on the airwaves this week regarding this, congratulations. You've been on 3 news stations in the state?
If they're slumming it with me on the air, you know it's got to be a big deal, and a lot of other people are busy. But no, it's been great, good exposure for our podcast. But and I talked to the ABC 15, my old employer, yesterday, along with K Gunn down in Tucson, and pretty much everything I've said has become irrelevant by Friday morning. But and who knows, this podcast will probably be irrelevant by the time we get it out. But we're going to do the best we can.
Yeah, so we're recording on Friday morning, and the latest news is that Oregon and Washington are set to join the Big Ten.
Yep.
Arizona looks like it's heading to the Big 12. We're going to act as if that's the case, but what we don't know is if ASU is going to join them.
Well, and we're going off the latest, and this is right before we recorded. Brett McMurphy filed the story about Oregon and Washington jumping to the Big Ten. And then he mentioned it. I'll just read it verbatim from his story. With additional schools leaving the Pac-12, the Mountain West would be open to adding remaining Pac-12 schools to the league. The Mountain West currently has a linear television deal with Fox and CBS Sports Network, with additional games on CBS for the 2025 season. So basically, you'd be looking at a Mountain West Pac-12 merger, even though it sounds like it would be the Mountain West Conference, which I don't know would be considered a power conference or not. So I want to go down, if you'll allow me, just a little pros and cons list. Okay, here's where we're at. It sounds like Arizona's probably still Big 12 bound, but things have changed literally by the minute. So pros of remaining in what's left of the Pac-12. You get continuity. There's definitely some appeal to staying put with so much upheaval elsewhere. The West would still have a power conference of its own, maybe. And as of now, a guaranteed college football playoff bid once it expands to 12 teams. Hopefully that would be in the mix. As our friend Corey Leff, a.k.a. John Wall Street, has reminded us, there's likely to be another round of realignment in the near future. So the Pac-12 stays together for the short term in whatever form that may take. Arizona may find itself in an even better situation in a few years versus the one currently presented to them by the Big 12. For football, you still have a presence in California, which has been fertile recruiting ground for Jedd Fisch and his staff. And this is a bit of a Hail Mary, but the chance at a Rose Bowl would still be alive. Say Arizona puts it all together under Jedd Fisch in a year or two. No USC, UCLA, now Oregon or Washington. If the Pac-12 or Mountain West or whatever is still the representative for the Rose Bowl when all the dust clears, if Arizona stays there, it's possible Arizona could finally get there. Let's get to the cons and start with the obvious: less money and visibility. As far as the money, you're looking at a guaranteed $31.7 million per year through 2031 in the Big 12 versus what sounds like just over $20 million a year in the Pac-12. I don't even know that's on the table anymore after Oregon and Washington have gone. And for visibility, the Big 12 has ESPN and Fox locked up for another 8 years. We don't know all the details of the Pac-12 media deal, which again may be irrelevant by now. It sounds like it relies heavily on Apple TV. I know for most TV services, you have the option to scroll through and see all the sporting events that are currently playing. If Pac-12 games are on Apple TV, those games won't be searchable, and very few people are going to go out of their way to purchase yet another separate streaming service to see a game that they're probably only interested in if they bet on it. Okay. And you'd have security in the Big 12 as well. The security of knowing you're part of a power conference that's growing and not shrinking. Some quality competition, even without Texas and OU. And of course, on the basketball side, a much more competitive conference schedule versus a Pac-12 without UCLA and USC. Now, I think you'd agree at this point, the cons outweigh the pros, and I'd still like to see Arizona take just the sure thing and go to the Big 12. But I'm open-minded enough to let the process play out, see if there's more than meets the eye with the Pac-12 media deal. Again, if that's even on the table, if there's some sort of merger with the Mountain West, which does have a media deal in place for another couple of years, if they're able to add some more schools. So in decent sized markets as well, they are able to add San Diego State. That'd be a big market. So anything, if they were able to maintain that power conference status, I would be all for it. But now with Oregon and Washington leaving, I don't see how that happens. So I think Arizona, if they didn't they weren't going to make the move before. I think they have to make the move now for sure.
All right. So I want to address 2 points that you made before we get to buy or sell.
Sure.
I'll start with the first one, the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl, if Arizona were to be in the top 12, and let's say the Rose Bowl were a quarterfinal or a semifinal, they're still going to have
they
that
can
advantage.
Make it that way.
Yeah. So that is out the window. The
fine.
Rose Bowl thing is out the window. All right. The second one is about future realignment. I'm sorry, but I cannot get on board with, and I'm not going to name names of certain people that, we are friends with or align with on this show, that are big on the future realignment. Arizona's not going to the Big Ten. All right, let's look at future realignment options. The SEC, you don't want to go there because Arizona will always be outmatched in terms of football. So I would pass on that. Okay, I want no part of that. All right, as far as the Big Ten goes, they're now at what 16, 7. I mean, there's a lot of schools from the ACC that they're going to want to pluck way before Arizona. Yeah. Stanford and Cal would come before Arizona. Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, maybe Miami. I mean, and North Carolina.
Well, it sounds like the ACC may implode soon as well. So I think my big question is, in a few years, are we going to be looking at a Big Three or a Big Two? Because I think that's where we're headed. Is it's going to be?
I think it's three. I think it's
going to be. You think it's going to be Big 12, SEC, and Big 10 ultimately?
Yeah. And I think what you're going to see is 3 2014 conferences.
Yeah,
I think that is the likely scenario. Mm-hmm. Listen, I would love for Arizona to one day be able to join the Big Ten. I just can't see it as viable. I just don't see anything in there how that long term, at least in the next 10, 15 years, how that's viable.
Well, with the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams as well, you're in a situation where you don't necessarily have to win the conference or maybe even finish second in the conference to get a slot. So from that regard, I think it makes it more attractive, even though I'm not a fan of all this consolidation, and I would like the West to still have its own power conference. Doesn't sound realistic at this point.
Nope.
And so I think that you're looking, it's a 24-team conference. How are we ever going to win that? Well, you don't necessarily have to now in order to get into the top 12.
Yeah, you would think. So basically this new conference, the Big 12, assuming it were to get to 24, they would probably have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4 seats at the table, depending on the year, just depending on how strong the teams are. Yeah. Is Arizona ever going to be one of those teams? I'd say once every 20 to 25 years at most.
They did it in 2014, so it's possible. But yeah,
it's 2014 and 98. So, so twice in basically a 20-year span.
Yeah, I think we're both realistic in that. I think if Jedd Fisch stays long-term and is successful at Arizona, that they could possibly become a perennial top 25 team, probably not a top 10 team, but maybe a team that once every few years sneaks into the top 12. I think that is the absolute best case scenario for Arizona.
So as far as basketball goes, how I've been complaining about the strong non-conference schedule. Well, I don't think you don't need to do that in future years now. You don't.
I still would. I mean, like it.
Well, all right, a few games, but you don't need to have 5 like you do this year.
Why are you so opposed to them playing tough teams?
You got to get wins, Shane. You need wins.
Wins against who?
It doesn't matter. 25 wins is going to get you further than 8. If you go 18 and 11.
Not always.
At 18 and 11, what's the highest seed you could possibly get?
Well,
a 5?
It's a bit simplistic, though, because sometimes teams that have won in the mid to high 20s don't even get into the tournament versus teams that win 18 or 19 games that get in. And again, I'm not so big about seeding because we've seen what the 1 seed is not impervious to upsets in the first round anymore. The 2 seed, we saw with Arizona, and there's been a bunch of cases of that. So it's a simple process. You get to the damn tournament and then you win 6 games in a row and you get there. It's not easy, but it's simple. And I think that the seeding is way overrated. So, and I also just like the idea of, taking some licks in the regular season, playing some top cup competition will only prepare you more for the NCAA tournament. So I am 100% not with you on this one.
Okay, we can agree to disagree on this one, and I'm sure this will be a frequent topic once we see how Arizona's schedules look in the future. Let's get into buy or sell because we have some interesting questions that we have not discussed already as far as this potential realignment. Now, I'm going to operate under the fact that Arizona will end up joining the Big 12 in the next 4 days at the latest. Okay. So we'll probably
Yeah.
record another episode sometime in the middle of next week if all goes well. I assume Arizona will be in the Big 12 by then. If not, I would be surprised. All right. This is Buy or Sell presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com and use promo code Wildcat Country to get $5 off. Our friend David bought one of those beauties that Shane is drinking out of on the live stream here, or on the
I'll
the
put it
YouTube
back on here
stream.
real quick.
Yeah. So thanks, David, for doing that. Really appreciate you supporting it. Get one of these things. I mean, hey, it's a way to support our Wildcats in the Big 12, right? And Ice Shaker, or you go to fanatics.com and get your share of Ice Shakers over there. All right, Shane, number one, it is best for all if Arizona and Arizona State remain in the same conference. Buy or sell?
I will buy just from a nostalgic fan's perspective. I think it would be best for both Arizona schools. Certainly, either way would want them to play each other in football at least once a year. Like, if the other sports I don't care so much about. I feel like still with men's basketball, Arizona's biggest rival has been UCLA, which is why it's a real shame that they're heading to the Big Ten in that regard, because we won't have that rivalry every year, which I think is one of the best in college sports. But I don't know if they must stay together. I think it would certainly be a good idea. It sounded like before all the chaos happened today, Friday, that ASU was going to begrudgingly come along with Arizona to the Big 12, even with Mike LaCroix's misgivings. The president of ASU, for whatever reason, was dragging his feet on this. So I would like them to stick together. I think it would be beneficial for both schools. If one or the other has to go, I prefer it to be Arizona. but as far as the rivalry goes, I hope that one way or the other they're able to keep that going, because it's one of the best in the country, even though it's not really talked about. And you got the 100th Territorial Cup game would be coming up, I believe, in 2026 in Tucson. So hopefully, if nothing else, they keep that going.
All right. I'm going to sell this. I mean, all right, fine. Is it best for all? Sure. Do I really care? No. I'm with you. Everybody, listen, if you got to look out for yourself. And I think Dr. Robbins is doing that. And Michael Crow, for a smart man, he's playing a really dumb card here. Yeah. He was a giant supporter of Larry Scott's, who got the Pac-12 into this disaster to begin with. Listen, Shane, if they had accepted Texas and Oklahoma back in 2012, this is a power conference.
Yeah.
Nope. And everybody would want to. I mean, the Big 12 would be begging to join. Yeah. Members would be begging to join this conference. Larry Scott screwed this up, but Kliavkoff has done absolutely nothing. I mean, literally, how does somebody keep his job and made millions and done nothing? Nothing. He's gotten nothing accomplished. Nothing.
If you want to be really kind, you just have to say he has not done a good job picking up the pieces from the Larry Scott era. But yeah, it's interesting with ASU in particular, and I know I'm biased, but I feel like ASU fans think their football program is more prestigious than it actually is. And they should be better on a regular basis, but they're not. They're typically better than Arizona in a given season, more often than not. But, for all the crap that they like to give us Wildcats about Arizona never having gone to the Rose Bowl, ASU hasn't been since any of their current players are still alive, and they haven't won it since Ronald Reagan was president. So they're not if they think that they're going to buy their time and a bigger conference is going to come in and snatch them up, it ain't happening. It's just
can I say that I'm going to cut you off here for a second.
Yeah,
there was some moron who posted on a reply to your Twitter comment yesterday, who said that, and I don't remember the guy's name because it was obviously somebody who's hiding behind a fake name because they weren't willing to attribute this moronic post to their real name.
Calm down.
Shane, one of the dumbest things I've seen in a long time on Twitter.
Okay.
He's like, well, the Big 12 only wants ASU and is just using Arizona as leverage. Yeah. What in the actual heck are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's delusional. I looked at his Twitter feed and I'm like, this guy is not plugged in with reality in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, that Arizona seems to be leading the way here, and ASU is going to follow lockstep. If nothing else, you think of TV markets. Phoenix is certainly more prominent than Tucson, but for whatever reason, Arizona seems to be holding the cards here, and ASU will probably follow as long as Michael Crow doesn't get it in his own way. So I would like to see them stay together. I mean, they've been together since the Border Conference, pre-World War II. Border Conference, the WAC, the Pac-10, the Pac-12. So I would like to see that continue. If nothing else, hopefully they continue the football rivalry.
So, I made a mistake on last week's show. I talked about the grant of rights and how I think for existing members of the Big 12, it's for a long time, like 100 years, or maybe I don't know. That's what I had understood.
It's definitely less than 100 years.
Well, it's for a long time. We'll just say it's for a long time.
Okay.
Arizona would not be locked in here longer than the TV contract in all likelihood,
Yeah.
which is fine. This is a deal you have to take.
Yeah.
It's not saying you can't realign down the road if the Big Ten and SEC go to 40 teams
You got to take
each,
the sure thing, though.
you got to take the sure bet here.
Yeah.
And I cannot understand for the life of me what Michael Crow and ASU are holding on to.
Yeah.
The Pac-12, if with Oregon and Washington out, it's dead. There is no appeal.
I think Oregon and Washington leaving will motivate ASU to follow in lockstep with Arizona, if they haven't already been. Yeah,
and Utah should do the same.
And
Stanford, unfortunately, they're going to get hung out to dry. The Big Ten kind of wants them, but they only want them with Notre Dame. So the question is, what does Notre Dame do? Cal, nobody really cares about, and Washington State and Oregon State. Too bad that nobody cares about them either. They'll go to the Mountain West and they'll do just fine. And you know what? For those schools, Shane, there's still an automatic qualifier from the non-power whatever it's going to be. Yeah. 4, 3, whatever.
I know, but you wouldn't be happy with that if Arizona was doing it. But for Washington State and Oregon State, it's fine.
Well, but I mean, the revenue up there, I know they've got some good football teams, but they're not bringing in, Arizona leads the Pac-12 in attendance in both basketball, men's and women's.
Yeah.
You can't even, it's not even comparable. They draw on most years more football fans because their stadiums are bigger. Arizona Stadium is bigger.
Yeah.
Than the other two. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yeah. Okay. So here's my thing about this ASU thing. I believe it's not that hard to schedule non-conference games with each other. Are you buying or selling that?
I'll buy it, at least for football. I mean, I don't think in the other sports they'd really go out of their way to. I mean, they might, even now in baseball, Arizona plays GCU every year because it's an easy trip. So they'd probably keep doing that for certain sports. I don't know about basketball.
I think it has to be, you have to do a non-conference. I mean, that's, if they were to agree on that and just say, okay, we're going to play a non-conference game once a year and, in football, basketball, men's and women's, and do a series in baseball and softball, I have no problem with it. And nor should anyone else. And by the way, I just want to address another point about Arizona not getting a chance some years to play a game in Phoenix. Well, the years that you're not scheduled to play ASU in the non-conference up here, you schedule a game at the Footprint Center as they're doing this year anyways with Alabama. So really not that hard.
They'd probably find a way to keep it going. I just don't think it's as necessary as football from a fan's perspective. I still think
I think it is.
I think UCLA is a bigger rival for Arizona men's basketball. I know ASU is going to be playing that Hail Mary and McHale Center on their highlight reel for the next century. But still, it's just not that big a rivalry compared to Arizona UCLA, which is unfortunately about to end. So, but as far as baseball, like a lot of times they'll take a day trip and go play one game and come back home. So something like that, I think you could continue, and maybe with some other sports as well. But to me, as long as they keep the football rivalry going, like Clemson and South Carolina do, and Florida and Florida State, despite their being in different conferences, I'm good with that.
All right, so I know this is going to be an area where you and I disagree, but if the Territorial Cup were to become a non-conference game, when should it be played, Shane?
Hopefully still at the end of the year. And again, like Clemson, South Carolina, that's always played at the end of the year. I think Georgia Tech is played at the end of the year. So I think you could still keep that going. It may be a little bit trickier. And there have been years already where that hasn't been the last game of the season. It almost always is, but I think back to 2011, both teams had a game afterwards. There's been a couple of other instances of that. So I would still, as a traditionalist, would like to see it played right after Thanksgiving. It hasn't always been. You go back to pre-World War II. Sometimes those games were played earlier in the season. But I would like to see it be the last game of the regular season for both schools.
Yeah, I don't care. I know you're not going to like this, but I don't care. As long as it's played, I don't care if it's played in September, make it a night game. That's fine. You play it in November. I don't care. I don't care who Arizona ends the season with. If you want to end it with TCU, you want to end it with Baylor, you want to end it with BYU, fine. Don't care.
It would definitely change. I'm sorry. It would definitely change the perspective sometimes, because a lot of times, if you have a bad season, the one team can treat it like as their bowl game, which Arizona did a lot. Especially that's how the streak started in the 80s when Arizona was on probation and wasn't bowl eligible in the early 80s. I talked to Ricky Hundley and some other guys who said we treated that game as our bowl game because we weren't going to a bowl game, and that's how Arizona was able to beat ASU, even though ASU was a better team on paper, a lot of times in the 80s was that they had that kind of motivation. And that's been good for Arizona over the years too. Years of they're just not very good. It's like, okay, if we can at least end the season with the win over ASU, it would be all worth it. So if the game was played earlier in the season, that perspective would be thrown out the window. So you talk about intangibles, things that would change a bit.
Okay, and that's fair. I guess also it wouldn't, if it was played at the end of the year and it was non-conference, it wouldn't affect, if Arizona was doing well in the Big 12 and let's say was going to appear in the Big 12 championship game, wouldn't affect that. Right. This is an unlikely scenario. I still think ASU will join the Big 12, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I know my opinion of the game being played whenever is in the minority of others. I don't really care, but I completely understand yours and others' perspective as far as the tradition of that goes.
Well, and and the last thing I'll say about it is I would certainly rather that game be played earlier in the season than not at all. But hopefully, if Arizona and ASU do end up in different conferences, we're able to keep that post Thanksgiving tradition going.
I just saw on Twitter somebody posted. This is kind of a sick joke of the submersible, the Mobile, the Titanic thing that sank with a Pac-12 logo on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's easy though. That's kind of on the nose.
Cheap humor. What can I say? All right. So number 2, Shane, I've got so many questions today. Who knows where we're at? If Arizona were to somehow stay in the pack, it would be a program ruining decision. Unlikely, but just want to throw it out there.
I'll sell it. I don't think it would be program ruining. I think that again, if provided that they're able to keep that power designation and get an automatic college football playoff berth, I think that has to be part of it. And even the discussions I know on Thursday were centered on the appeal. One of the appeals for staying would be continuing to have that automatic bid now that the college football playoff is expanding. So if they're able to keep that designation, I don't think it would be a disaster. I think in terms of recruiting, guys come to play for coaches more than the status of the conference they play in. Their main focus is to get to the next level, which I think Jed Fish and his staff have been fantastic at selling guys on. Come to Arizona and we'll prepare you for the next level. We've got a wealth of experience and knowledge there. So I don't think it would be a disaster. I think that it would continue that era of uncertainty and largely obscurity as well if we're going to mostly a streaming platform or whatever we end up with. But so I'll sell that, but I would certainly rather, as we've discussed multiple times, I'd rather Arizona make that leap to the Big 12.
All right. So I think it would be a program ruining decision if they were to stay in the pack, because what is the pack going to look like? I certainly don't know. It without Oregon or Washington doesn't seem very good. So to me, I think I don't even know the right word. I can't even speak today. You're cannibalizing your program. I mean, you're ruining it by staying in a weak conference. You might as well go to the Mountain West at that point, because the Mountain West arguably would be stronger.
Yeah, if Klyavkov and the Pac-12 CEOs that they came in and made a last-ditch pitch and begrudgingly persuade the university presidents to stay, I can't imagine how they regroup and do it again after Oregon and Washington have left. I don't see a way back now, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a way back now either. But you never know. It's going to be a crazy next 48, 72, 96 hours. I hope Arizona gets this done before you and I even put out this podcast. Just make the announcement and we're done with it, right? Yep. Number 3, Arizona would immediately be able to compete in both football and basketball in the Big 12 by or sell.
Bye. Yeah, a year ago I might not have said so with football, but men's basketball, obviously, they're doing great already with Tommy Lloyd. The NCAA tournament results notwithstanding, they're obviously still a power program, and Lloyd has done a great job refilling this roster this season. And as far as football, especially with Texas and OU leaving, you run down the conference. I would say there are some more, I want to say gimmies, but potential games I feel better about in the Big 12 than I would as the Pac-12 is this year. And we talked about how there aren't really any gimmies on Arizona's schedule, especially because the games that look to be a bit easier are on the road. But you think about playing teams like Kansas, or who else am I trying to think of? Kansas is one that up there. I think they would be competitive. I think that they would be as competitive as they have been in the Pac-12. I think certainly the recruiting could shift a little bit, which I'm a little concerned about because I think they've done very well in California, and how well will they still be able to continue to recruit there? It's not like they can't still recruit there, even if they move to the Big 12, but I think they'd be able to compete right away. I don't think it would. I think this program is on an upward trajectory, and I don't think moving to the Big 12 would change that.
I think it would be an outstanding move. I think they would compete right away. I think in basketball, you're looking at a team that's an upper echelon team just about every year under Tommy Lloyd in the Big 12. So I'm all for it. And I think when it comes to football, I don't think the Big 12 is that strong. I mean, you have without Texas and Oklahoma, you have teams that have peaked like Cincinnati now, and TCU obviously was in the championship game last year. But there's no one year in, year out. Kansas State also was, very good. Yeah. But you don't have a team that's where you're like, that is a dominant powerhouse like a USC or an Oregon.
Not consistently.
Anymore. Right. There's nobody. I mean, you're going to have teams that, Baylor has spiked. TCU has spiked. Texas Tech, under in the Mike Leach days, that spiked. Kansas State has as well. But there's nobody, as we said, year in, year out, where you're like, yeah, I think that Arizona is definitely a notch below them. Let's put it this way. If Arizona were to beat any team in the Big 12, would they make a T-shirt in the bookstore for it? Like if they were to beat USC?
Yeah. Good
point. Probably not.
OK State, we beat OK State in 2012.
Been there, done that.
TCU.
I mean, what are you gonna? Baylor, who's gonna buy we beat TCU shirt?
Yeah,
nobody.
No.
But so,
I think as a whole, the conference is probably a little bit better, but in terms of like consistent powerhouse teams like you think Oregon or USC, I think the conference would be up for grabs more often. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're not having the top heavy conference that the Pac-12 has been generally of late. Yeah. If Utah comes in, I mean, Utah very well could be the best team year in, year out under Kyle Whittingham. But how much longer does he have as well? So it's going to be a very interesting time. You and I have broken it down in many ways, and we have more to discuss. Unfortunately, no guests this week, but we have more to discuss in our next segment here on Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? It's Robbie G, baby, and I am gearing up for a big year with Coach Jedd Fisch and excited to see what the Arizona Wildcats do this football season. And just like the football team, we stepped up our program as well with the official licensed U of A Ice Shaker, baby. Check it out and get it at fanatics.com. Bear down, Arizona. Let's go.
So a couple other things that we want to discuss before we end the show. First of all, Arizona got a big quarterback recruit out of Basha High. We talked about this the other week. Damon Williams committed to the Wildcats. He's about 5'11" quarterback out of, as I said, Basha High in the Phoenix area. Was an Ole Miss commit. He is the 17th ranked quarterback according to 24/7 Sports nationally. It's a great get for the Wildcats, and definitely some pressure on Noah Fafita. You're gonna have you're gonna have some competition coming in next year.
Well, and Damon Williams has the height advantage at 5'11" over Noah Fafita as well. But yeah, they've got they'll have three great quarterback options next season, beyond DeLaura, and it's astounding what Arizona's done in state in terms of in-state recruiting. I believe they have 5 of the top 20 recruits in Arizona committed to the Wildcats for next season. Which I think ASU has 2, that's insane. Oregon has 3. Yeah. So that is a big shift from just a few years ago, where Kevin Sumlin and his staff wouldn't even go after those kinds of guys. So it's remarkable what he's done in state, and Arizona's quarterback room should be secure for going forward. They've got already, one of the most maybe unproven, but certainly one of the deepest heading into next year.
Love it. Great job, Jedd Fisch. Crushing. I mean, it's just so cool to see Arizona recruiting these in-state kids and landing them like this. I absolutely love it. And then finally, we couldn't do a show without talking about the new name of that stadium in Tempe. Shane, I'm sure you have some thoughts on whatever it's called, even though we're still going to call it Sun Devil Stadium. Is it a good move or a bad move?
Well, it's a move that Arizona should have made a long time ago. I agree. I used to write for the Arizona Daily Wildcat, and I wrote a column back in 2001 about how Arizona should give away the naming rights to its stadium. And I still think that it's an easy revenue stream. It's not like it's named after someone. You know, someone mentioned, okay, well, what about McHale Center? I wouldn't touch McHale Center because it's named after Pop McHale, who's a legend at the University of Arizona. But Arizona Stadium, it's generic. People are still going to call it that. If you name it after, you know, you rename it EG Stadium or whatever, you're still going to call it Arizona Stadium, or, oh, I'll meet you at the football stadium or whatever, you know. So I don't think it's going to change much except bring in a little more revenue for the school. So I think it's a move that ASU made. They made it with the basketball arena a while ago, which I think you still call the activity center.
I do.
But that was an easy decision for them as well too, because it's, you know, the activity center. It's not named after you know, a Sun Devil basketball great, which, you know, for obvious reasons. But on the football side, it's something Arizona should do. And hopefully they're looking into it. Hopefully this motivates them to do it. I kind of doubt it, but I wouldn't touch McHale Center, but I would rename Arizona Stadium and get a few more $1 million in athletics revenue.
Well, I think I also don't have a problem with, you know, if you find like a cool sponsor, like I'm all for it. I know that's, you know, like a cool name for it. Yeah. I don't really like, you look at the stadium in Miami where the Hurricanes and the Dolphins play. That thing has been renamed like 10 times. I mean, literally, they still call it Joe Robbie Stadium.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the Suns Arena has been around for what, 30 years?
What do you call it? What if I asked you where do the Suns play? What do you say? What's the first thing?
I would say the Footprint Center, but yeah,
I'd say America West Arena,
U.S. Airways Center, Talking Stick Resort Arena, Phoenix Suns Arena, and yeah. And I will say, though, as far as cool names, ASU got it right by naming their hockey arena the Mullet.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, because they had a sponsor that did that. So
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
right.
That is kind of a cool name.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Anything you could do to get extra revenue there, everybody's still going to call it Arizona Stadium, though.
Yeah.
Like there's no, but if it's, you know, Casino del Sol, Arizona Stadium, or Arizona Stadium, I don't know, something like that. Like, I guess you could do Casino del Sol Stadium, but everybody's still going to call it Arizona Stadium.
Right.
If you're
or just the football stadium. Like you talk to your friends, I'll meet you at the stadium or I'll meet, you know, at so-and-so time.
Well, so I look at it, if you're one of those companies from a marketing perspective, like, why are you doing that? Everybody's still going to call it that. I guess maybe in the TV listing, or, you know, on TV, they're saying we're here at Casino del Sol Stadium or whatever, you know.
Someone mentioned on Twitter the other day, it's like do these things really work? Because like our buddy Jeff Dean, he mentions the Lexus of Tucson Charity 3. It's like, I never bought a Lexus because of that. Does anyone really do that? And my answer is, I guess, because companies keep paying for it, there must be something there. So I've always wondered that myself. Just because you have the name of it, does that mean people are really going to do more business with you? But apparently the answer is yes, because companies keep doing that. And as long as you want to keep forking over the money, I'm okay with it.
Marketing 101. Hey, we're all for it. Listen, you want people to, you know, you advertise a brand, you want somebody to buy it. I just think from a stadium perspective, where everybody already has the name of the stadium, that the true fans have the name of the stadium in hand, or, you know, they already know it by heart. I don't know if it does as much, but hey, good for ASU for getting that extra revenue stream. Yep. Not good for ASU for holding up everything to the Big 12. Let's just get on with it already. Hopefully by the time Shane and I are on next week, we are talking about Arizona in the Big 12 and what will scheduling look like. It should be a wild time. And hopefully when you're listening to this podcast, it's still kind of up to date. We'll find out about that. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, especially now, bear down.